From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they want Q-Tab, I'ma do the dab, yeah.
Q-Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q-Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q-Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q-Time, an Urban Passport member.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Now, you can't live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Oh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless.
Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you, all of you.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
So we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell them mama hungry.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah, man. I I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment. Welcome to episode 272 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show is covering the sporting HBCU dash from all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NAIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture and HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper, in a beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. With that being said, Charles, how you doing today?
Doing well, Doc. Doing well. You know, trying to get ready for Swag Media Day, getting these workouts in the morning. And
man, so you gonna look like the athletes over there.
We as much as a 48-year-old can look like an athlete.
Well, all right. Well said. Well said. Let me do a shout out before we get into it. Hillman Frazier, LaShawn Harris, Genoa Sott, Joseph Carver, Roderick Byron Holmes, that's Dr. Holmes, Michael Lee, Troy Franklin, Varick Williams. He says go Jags as he jumps in here and gets it started. I like it. With that being said, what's some of the news of the day?
Yeah, well, we want to start off, unfortunately, on a somber note. We wanted to make mention of this. Benjamin Anderson, former Arkansas Pine Bluff quarterback, was great. He led them to a SWAC championship in 2012. Unfortunately, he passed away. The school announced this past Monday. So definitely want to send prayers to the UAPB Golden Line family. But when you take a look at what he was able to accomplish during his time at the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, you're talking about a school record in terms of passing 9,489 yards, 63 touchdowns. He also rushed for almost 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. But he had built a company, Q-Breeze, a training LLC in 2020. He also played some professional football in Japan, where he was an MVP over there. But a huge loss for UAPB, a Golden Line family.
Yeah, also a huge loss for the SWAC. HBCUs appropriately, as you said. A couple of things come to mind when you talk about is that big play that he had in the SWAC championship game, where he hauls back and throws that, touchdown. It really was the momentum breaker. Yeah, that changed the game in so many different ways. And you see it as it's coming. You like, no, this is not about to happen. And you like, oh yeah, this just happened. Into that in terms of what he's done on the field. I remember also working with some students to kind of take it back. Was they were really interested in covering HBCU sports, the SWAC. So we kind of jumped into this magazine cover. So a couple of folks in my class, they did a cover in his championship that he had with the Pine Bluff at the quarterback was on the cover, and everybody else were wearing these championship caps, and he had his Alpha Phi Alpha cap on. So that was really unique to me and was iconic in regards to, you could tell that he was, his self frame was about the team, but also had his self image out there that he wanted to control and do. So it was really sad news when I got that from BJ Jones, who shared it, and he's had some commentary that really talked about how he was connected as he covers football, particularly the SWAC in a lot of ways, like no one else, specifically just one focus on one sport, the way he brings it. So I thought his comments were poignant, and so appropriate to take a moment as we seem to be busy and we don't understand that life is that fragile in so many different ways. Take a moment of silence on behalf of Ben Anderson. With that being said, before I go back with you with some others, we got AD Drew in here out in the class, and he did a report on APR that you all got to make sure that you catch out the show on Sunday as they do their sports wrap, where they'll go into some detail. I was reviewing the spreadsheet he had and the details that he have in regards to break it down, not just overall, but for various sports is really big in so many different ways. So it'll be fascinating to see how that comes to the table. Shout out to Ricky Burton, Troy Franklin. Good evening from Baton Rouge, fellas. Go Jag, no doubt about it. Chuck Hunt, Hillman Fraser. Hello to all. Greetings from Southern Cal. Karen Griffin.
Senator Hillman Fraser, how you doing, sir? I always got to speak to the good senator from the great state of Mississippi.
I appreciate him showing us love, and it's how we get the dignitaries doing that, Senator Fraser. We appreciate it. Jerome G. Sutton, hello from hot Tampa. Yeah, it is hot all over the South for many folks, and they say the ozone is not broken, but I'm not too sure of that in terms of what's going on out there. Let me jump back to you, see if we can get some other news out there.
Yeah, other news else out there, the annual Bayou Classic, it will be returning to NBC for the 2022 season. So that was big news when you take a look at the annual rivalry between Grambling and Southern. They'll be played, the 49th annual Bayou Classic in the season. Superdome will be on NBC. The game will be broadcasted live at 1 p.m. Central. And since 2015, the annual rivalry had been kickoff at 4 p.m. So now that time has been moved up to 1 p.m. For NBC. So huge news for the Bayou Classic.
What are your thoughts? I know there's some conversation about the game being moved up. Any thoughts from you in regards to if it's anything to do with anything?
I mean, when you move back to the big platform, I mean, I think that's huge news. So that is the big thing. There will be more eyeballs on the Bayou Classic and everything with regards to the culture of the Bayou Classic and Grambling and Southern. So looking forward to it going back to quote unquote big NBC.
Yeah, when you start looking at flex schedules and being on these, as you said, the over-the-air cable network platforms, one of the things is you lose is your time adjustments. Even the Power 5 schools, you hear them complaining, Big 12 in terms of them having to play them early games on Fox or the late games. But when people start to write them checks in a lot of ways, or if you want to use those platforms to benefit, one of the things you have to get adjusted is the fact that times are not necessarily going to be what you're used to. Fans will make the adjustment too much of a big deal for the fans. The support be around there, so they'll figure it out. So I have no question about that. Did want to shout out, we got another dignitary, if you would. Shout out to Dr. Paul Bryant, athletic director at Edward Waters University, champion, multiple champion, baseball, softball, transitioning over to the SIAC. Big time. Appreciate the support there. So fascinating to see what's going on there. A couple of NCAA track folks are excited about where they finished in different ways. Top 10 finish for PVAMU's Crawford Wallace in terms of making history at the track and field championship. FAMU, Robinson earns honorable mention, All-American honors in Eugene. UAPB's John makes history, finishing top 10 in the NCAA championship. Howard Relay Squad set record. The NCAA championship finishing 6th, and they were flying, getting it done in so many different ways. Fascinating to see. Seniors Jessica Gabi, Amina Salia, Azoma Scott, and Jessica Wright as they put in a final time of 3:28:39 as they were getting it done. Big note there, this is once in a generational team, Howard Director of Track and Field David Oliver said. So, you know, he was excited about what they were able to do. And they certainly have set Howard's track program in the right place to move forward. So those were some big time. Any of the track and field excited you in terms of what you saw or heard out there, Charles?
Well, I think the big news when you take a look at it, North Carolina A&T's father and son combo now are coming to University of Tennessee. So I think that was big news when you take a look at everything that they had built up at North Carolina A&T. Now you have this NCAA champion that is joining this Power 5 program along with his father.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
Dwayne Ross Jr.
Yeah, as he's back-to-back national champion in terms of what he's been able to do in his short but illustrious career at this point. And he's just going to add on to it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it'll be a A&T, but he certainly did what he could to set the mark there. It would be fascinating to see where they're able to go forward. Obviously, you would think that you could get a coach that would have an interest there. A couple of things. They know they can win there. Recruiting-wise, they know facilities are nice. They know funding financially is there. And you have the fact that if you win at that level, you know that you can move to a quote-unquote more financial, higher level in regards to that. So that usually puts you in good space. So sometimes I think we get lost with coaches moving, and that's just the way it is in terms of this business. Coaches are hired to be fired. If not, they leave out for the next bigger jobs. I thought that was fascinating. One of the things saw on here that's fascinating is Delaware State wins Emmy, 43rd Sports Emmy Award, MEAC. Shout out to Delaware State and what they're doing in terms of their media program. In this case, looking at the sports media side. On Tuesday, May 24th, 6 Delaware State students, Isaiah Abrams, Michelle Crockett, Gwenna Gentile, Nia Pope, Carlos Vasquez, and Isaiah Williams, along with the professor, Dr. Renee Marine, and Professor Zachary Kimball, attended the 43rd Sports Emmy Award and walked away with the gold. Since we're talking about gold, first, second achievements, the mass communication students created a short documentary, Once a Hornet, Always a Hornet, the past, present, and future of Delaware State University football, which highlighted Coach Rod Milstead's career as a star student athlete, an NFL Super Bowl winner, and his journey back to his HBCU as the coach. The film was entered as part of the inaugural HBCU Sports production, grant sponsored by Coca-Cola Company and the National Academy of Television Arts and Science. Congratulations to Delaware State. Winning entry earned $40,000 grant and coveted Sports Emmy Award. So we got some Emmy winners.
That's huge. That's huge.
That was a big deal. When I saw that news, I had to get it out there. I remember when the solicitations came out and was excited about that opportunity and was interested to see who would be able to jump in there and get that done. So fascinating to see where that goes in a lot of ways. What else do you have on your plate?
Well, I did want to get this out there, and this is huge. NFL All-Pro. This comes from HBCU Sports website. NFL All-Pro Darius Leonard. He donates $15,000 to the Uvalde shooting victims. So in response to the mass shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas, former South Carolina State star Darius Leonard announced that he is donating $15,000 through his nonprofit, the Maniac Foundation, to cover burial costs. So a huge gesture from All-Pro linebacker Darius Leonard to in response to this mass shooting. So very appreciative for he and his foundation for what they're doing.
Yeah, and the fact that he had that in the front of his mind is just huge and tells you the caliber man he is in terms of paying for individuals that have lost so much. It still shakes me to think about that in so many different ways. It's beyond my ability to comprehend in terms of those that are in positions to make a difference deciding not to for whatever reason. Lennon below, I should say, can y'all please discuss about what schools can possibly join the MEAC? We've had this discussion before, but I think it's always worth getting out there, especially this is a critical time. July 1st is the deadline that if any schools are probably going to move, whether it's from a FBS conference to another FBS conference, or even moving up July 1st. So there were a couple of board meetings. You had the Howard board meeting last week, although we had a long period of time where the talk was out there that Howard was going to the Colonial. We didn't hear anything out of the last meeting last week. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen or whatever, but at this point, it looks like not before this July 1st date at least, which is important in terms of the financial situation and level setting, that if they're going to do it, you would think it would be before that time. But I bring all that up to say you also have Tennessee State meeting this week, Thursday and Friday. But if you look at their agenda, it just seems like a very standard athletic update. You imagine there's not any movement going on there. Later this week, you will hear SWAC meetings. They're doing their spring meetings in terms of going to Florida in regards to those updates. So it'll be fascinating to see. General things coming out of the meeting are just going to be your normal updates of sports and rules changes, number of teams, for example, in a baseball tournament. Those things can kind of turn around. Do you move a baseball tournament from Birmingham to New Orleans? Things of those are ratified and talked about. So you'll see those general updates coming out of that kind of meeting, just to let you know. So there are a couple of teams that people talked about in terms of Division II, Virginia State, Bowie State, Winston-Salem State. It seems like all of those are off the table in regards to them seriously looking at moving up. Probably the biggest one in a lot of folks of Virginia State, based on conversations I had with the leadership there, that's not a real desire, at least at this time. And so I'm not sure if there was a lot of options for the MEAC in terms of picking up folks from the Division II level. Maybe there's some other Division II programs, Fayetteville State, in terms of sizes that may have some interest in looking at that. But at this point, I don't see a lot of movement. I think you're really going to see people just kind of stand still. And again, I think the biggest thing that is halting any real dialogue, conversation moving forward is the fact that you have this transformation of Division I committee that is meeting now and are supposed to move forward before the end of the summer and provide some updates on what it means to be Division I. So you're not going to see particular Division II programs seriously look at moving until those decisions are made, because it's hard to make a decision and not be informed. So you're kind of stuck in this limbo in regards to what's going on. So just don't see a lot of movement in terms of the MEAC at this time, in terms of real potential institutions that are seriously looking at moving around.
Doc, I wanted to ask this question. So for fans, especially when you start to hear these rumors, what are sort of the, I don't know, the ABCs or things that you kind of start taking a look at where you can kind of seriously pinpoint whether a school is really ascertaining moving up?
I think the first thing you want to look at is if you have access to any institution where you hear them talking about doing a strategic athletic study, or a study specifically about turning and changing to a new conference, or moving up from Division II to FCS or FCS to FBS. If somebody desires about that, you need to look at agenda items on particular public institutions in terms of when the board meeting and when boards meet. That's going to give you some indication. And like I said, a clear indication is always July 1st. That's a window where a final date of a transition of the institution is going to take place no later than that, or they might as well wait till the final year. Because usually if they do it after that, the cost of going to another conference or leaving your conference, because it's mid-year, those conferences usually double their type of fees or increase those fees. So it's just, if you're doing it in terms of thinking about generating revenue, the last thing you want to do is pay out more fees. And so unless you're doing it for a totally different reason, which you would see in some type of study, we've heard about A&T moving, but there were plenty of information out there about studies that were being done. So that was your first real indicator that they were at least looking at it, whether it was going to FBS, whether it was changing from one conference to another conference. Even with the FAMU move, obviously you heard about the studies. They've done studies basically for 10 years. And you got to the point where you saw that it was going to be on the board agenda. So that kind of triggered. So anything else is probably just loose talk that you get from coaches that are talking about it, or some alumni that may have an itch or feel for it. But until you hear something from the president, chancellor, or board, you're not going to get any real movement. With that, let's take our first break. We'll be right back. We're going to give you our updates to poll rankings. Poll rankings. It's time for Dr. Cavil's poll ranking. Let's see what Charles Bishop, Professor Bishop, thinks on the poll rankings. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
Are you ready? It's time. The inaugural Urban NerdCon is coming to Montgomery, Alabama, July 29th through the 31st. Blurs, nerds, and geeks from across the universe will converge on the capital city to see celebrity guests such as The Last Dragon, Tybok, Megan Tandy, and voice actor Dave Fennoy.
Hey, how you doing? I'm voice actor Dave Fennoy with a shout out to all my geeks, freaks, and urban nerds. Just want to let you know I'm going to be there and I want to meet you at the Urban NerdCon Gaming and Cosplay event. It's happening July 29th through the 31st in Montgomery, Alabama. Hope you want to meet me as much as I want to meet you.
So join us by visiting theurbannerdcon.net for ticket and vendor information. This will be the premier blurred event in the universe. Theurbannerdcon.net. Our heroes, our villains, our stories, everyone's con. See you there.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
Well, let's get into the poll rankings. Yes, these are the rankings that are done in terms of voters, also computer rankings, so a combination of all things out here, and it's time for the preseason. See what y'all think about Dr. Cavil's poll rankings this week. Let's start at the bottom 10. We'll go 10 through 6. Before we do that, receiving some votes that were left out of the poll. Prairie and Panthers, 75-6-2. They were left out, had a great season, played for a championship last year, but they've lost the head coach to Southern University, rival institution division. Lost stud in terms of defensive line that transferred out, defensive cornerback that was all conference in a lot of ways. And they did get an FBS transfer in, so it looks like they have some folks coming in. Still should have some depth and talent, but you got a new coaching staff, so it's going to be fascinating to see how all this germinate. But because of all those chances and the unknown, particularly in terms of a quarterback position, I have a couple of quarterbacks that have been in there and played a little bit, but nobody has really come out as a starter. So it'll be fascinating to see what's going to go on. And you're going to hear that a lot this year in regards to quarterbacks. There's a huge changeover in terms of last year, which was advantageous for a lot of SWAC schools in terms of senior quarterbacks, graduate quarterbacks, fifth, sixth-year quarterbacks. They got the extra year for COVID and things of that nature is going to be fascinating. Just outside of the top 10, Grambling State Hornets 4-7, 3-5. Got a wealth of talent coming in from Grambling. A new head coach. Looks like they're going to be serious, but just in terms of the early season, it's hard to put them in the top 10 because you just don't know in terms of what's going to go on there, particularly the schedule. Same with Southern Jaguars. Championship head coach, previous as a coordinator, coming in, bringing a lot of transfer and talent. It's going to be fascinating to see how quick can they gel. These are teams, I will say, any three of these teams, to me, by the midpoint, near the end of the season, you can see a changeover. You can see them jump in the top 10 and start rattling off games and going in. But in terms of going into a preseason, too many unknowns for me, at least, and those that voted in the numbers to really say they should be in the top 10. With that, number 10, you have Norfolk State Spartans, 6-5, 2-3. A little controversy going over there, but second year for the program. Quarterback change, lost some players, got coming in there, but they come in at number 10. They finished 6-5 last year, 2-3, stubbing their toes, really falling out in terms of how they closed the season last year, but they find a way to sneak in at number 10. Bring us to number 9, Alabama State Hornets, 5-6, 3-5. Change over. Another question at quarterback position. Has a tough defense coming back. One of the best defense that was solid last year. Questions. They got a transfer from Auburn. Quarterback should be interesting to see what he's able to do. And you see that all down the East Division of the SWAC with transfer quarterbacks coming in. It'll be fascinating to see. You have them coming in Southern and Grambling. So somebody as a transfer quarterback is liable to step up and make a lot of difference. At number 8, Tennessee State Tigers, 5-6, 3-3. I told you it's going to be the same type of refrain. Second-year coach, solid in terms of what they were able to do. Defensive growth a little bit, but offense. What are they going to do on offense? Lose a quarterback that transferred in from Grambling. What are they going to be able to do this year, sitting at 5-6, 3-3? And number 7, North Carolina Central Eagles, 6-5, 4-1. Quietly was finished second in the MEAC. Stubbed their toe against Valley on the road, but finished up pretty strong. Be fascinating to see what they got going there in terms of what goes on at Central. At number 6, Alcorn State Braves, 6-5, 5-3. Say it again. Got to change at the quarterback position. What they're going to give you, they're always strong on the defense, but they lost their defensive coordinator, Cedric Thornton. He goes down to Grambling. Can he bring Grambling up in terms of a very solid defense they had there? What is he going to do in terms of defensive side of there, and what does that do for Alcorn State Braves? As we transition into the top 5, you have North Carolina A&T Aggies, 5-6, 3-4, coming in at 75 points. Supposed to be strong coming back on the defensive side. They got beat up a little bit last year. Can they transition in the conference? They finished well against their HBCU opponents of what they were able to play, including the win over South Carolina State, even though a quarterback got hurt in that game. Beat up on North Carolina Central, the Eagles. They start with them this fall in that classic game that they have up there in Charlotte. It'll be fascinating to see, can A&T get it going offensively, which they were up and down, obviously changing from a running back that they lose. Can they control that momentum? Let's get into the top 4. Alabama A&M Bulldogs, 73, 5-3. A lot of transfers coming in there. Can they gel? Replacing an all-everything quarterback. Had a transfer quarterback come in there that has since out of Miami that people were looking at and curious about, but he since decided that he's not going to play 5-3. Bring us to number 3, Florida A&M Rattlers, 9-3, 7-1. You start to get in some of these teams where you start to now see, to me, where the top 3 teams really separate themselves from everybody else because of what they're coming back, not just in terms of on the defensive side, but also on the offensive side in terms of quarterback play. It'll be interesting to see if FAMU is going to have a little more depth there, but they're familiar in terms of what they can do offensively, quarterback. Defensively is where they're going to really hang their hat early in the season. They got Isaiah, everything coming back. At number 2, Jackson State Tigers, 11-2, 8-0. I have a quarterback that was all conference, all FCS, freshman of the year. I lost in terms of a couple of key players on the defensive side, but they got a lot of pieces in the puzzle back. The depth of talent is going to be fascinating over there because it's going to create some competition. And I'm of the framework that the more talent you have, generally speaking, you tend to be the better you have. Now, do you get a question in terms of everybody coming together? They have a little head start on a lot of teams in terms of what they were able to do in the past. Number 1 is South Carolina State Bulldogs. This was a young team that was extremely talented. They were learning how to win, and they put everything together at the right time near the end of the season, running off some big victories against tough competition in terms of what they did conference-wise. Norfolk State, obviously what they did against Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl. Quarterbacks coming back, wide receivers coming back. And they got some young talent, and Coach Buddy Pugh, everybody knows by now, is a great coach and knows how to bring talent together. One of the things that I think South Carolina State and Buddy Pugh does not get enough credit for is the consistency in terms of keeping a lot of the coaches together, which makes it easier when you're bringing in people and teaching them the culture. All these other teams that you talk about with these new coaches, people don't really like to give credit in terms of what it means to develop a culture. Even when you think about what Jackson State was able to do last year, people look at it as first year, but he had that spring to really start to develop in that culture, which I believe really helped a lot of things in the fall. And that's going to be a challenge for these teams in terms of how fast can they create the culture that's necessary. But it's going to be fascinating in terms of the season to see what goes on. With that being said, let's take our second break because I want to tease you back. I saw you making your faces, reading the comments. It's all good. I got thick skin. Bring it on. Folks are just fandom. That's what a preseason poll is supposed to be about. It's supposed to get your blood churning. It's supposed to tell you why I don't know what I'm doing, Dr. Ville. All the greatness that you talk about me going to be like saying now he's lost it. He's lost his mind. He was good, all this, and all of a sudden he fell off the turnip truck. I get it. No problem. We'll take it in. We're going to tease you right after this break. We'll come back, read some of these comments, get it out there. It's going to be fascinating, good talk. And then we're going to see what Charles has to say in terms of his thoughts. The debut of Dr. Ville's Major Division Top 10 poll rankings. We'll post it at the end of the show. Make sure you get a chance to see the documents out there. I can't wait to see some of your thoughts. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
For 200 years, Montgomery, Alabama has been making history by people who had the courage to stand up for change. Today, this riverfront city has been reborn, embracing the past and looking forward to the future. From the National Memorial for Peace and Justice to the stage of the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, this is where history was and is made. We are proud to call Montgomery home, and together, we can be the change.
One bite of 100% Angus beef ballpark frank, and you'll say, hello, summer. Oh yeah, it's ballpark season.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service with Slow Burn. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge featuring a meticulous curated collection of premium cigars. It's more than a mobile lounge. It's an environment and an experience rich in history, luxury, and personality. An elegant extension of any celebration occasion. It's the perfect escape and meeting place, a space where you can relax or enjoy a shared passion. Have Slow Burn plan your next big event, or before you are planning to celebrate your win over your athletic rival, you can shop our collections at www.slowburnwaco.com.
But if they want to tab, I'ma do the dab, yeah. Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want a lot, yeah. And who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Man, some of the poll, some of our lab listeners, they weren't too hard on me. Some of them do a little jabs. I could take it. It wasn't too bad, but some people said, I thought they were gonna say I was sipping on something. So I'm pretty good that they didn't go there with me. So let me see what Charles, Professor Bishop thinks. He had his head hemming and hawing. He was looking big eyes, like he was concerned and didn't understand. Man, come on. Start with the receiving votes. What? Because you started there when you already was like, what happened?
And I almost stopped there. Like, what? Whoa.
So what concerns you with the receiving votes? Prairie View outside 7-5.
Prairie View outside at 7-5. The defending,
you see them as a top 10 team.
Yes, I do. The defending SWAC West champions definitely deserve to be in the top 10. That was a bit of a surprise. 7-5 last year.
Outside of, and I'm serious. I think I want to understand this from this perspective. Mm-hmm. Outside of the fact that they finished last year 7-5, mm-hmm. with all the different changes, what makes you believe that they will be a top 10?
I think the culture, number one, the culture's in place at Prairie View. I think that's going to be huge. I'm expecting Bubba McDowell to keep the train on the tracks, if you will, because he has been a part of this Prairie View A&M culture now for the past X number of years. So I think this staff knows how to win. And you saw them get over the hump, if you will, last year in the SWAC West. I think that was huge. So for them to get to the SWAC championship game, they've tasted it. They know what it takes to get back there. I think Grambling and Southern, frankly, are going to have to get back there, or are going to have to work their way over Prairie View, which I think is going to be a task because all three teams are going to have some look-sees at quarterback here. So whoever can answer that for Grambling, Southern, and Prairie View, that's going to be huge. But watch this. I'll tell you, the team nobody's talking about that scares me, they have a quarterback. Texas Southern University.
I was just going to ask you, what about Texas Southern?
Texas Southern University.
They don't want to come back with a quarterback.
Yeah, if we all talk about having, and you talk to assistant coaches in the SWAC, start with the quarterback position, and I can fill out my roster from there. Texas Southern is bringing back one hell of a quarterback. He is scary. He is dynamic. He can throw the football. He can pull it down, and he can run the football. I'm going to place Texas Southern as that outlier for people to start looking at now, because I do think that they are going to make some waves over there in the SWAC West. We saw it last year with that victory over Southern. I know a lot of Southern fans will say it was a down year for Southern. Hey, we ready to spot the ball with Eric Dooley. But I tell you what, those are program-changing wins anytime you can get a win over a blue blood. So that's a team that I'm going to keep an eye on with Texas Southern. But yeah, Prairie View, I easily could have put them either in at 7 in front of Tennessee State. I think.
Well, hold on. Before you go to the next 10, I want to level set, because you said a lot there. That's pretty good. You talked about Prairie View. You can see them top 10, Grambling State, Southern. Top 10 are not top 10. Either one of those or neither of those.
Not yet. Not yet. I think I need to see a little bit.
But you said watch out. So at least you think Texas Southern, if not top 10, they should be receiving some hope.
They should be receiving, but I think Grambling, that's a huge hire in bringing Cedric Thornton to Grambling. Cedric Thornton is a proven commodity in the Southwestern Athletic Conference in terms of being a defense coordinator. It's only a matter of time before he becomes a head coach. But that is an addition to their staff that I think is going to get that Grambling State defense back to where they were about 4 or 5 years ago when they were headhunting quarterbacks.
Shout out to Steve Gaither and Mike Washington. Boys, he talking about Texas Southern. Like, oh, that's good. All right, so let's get into my next top 10. I have Norfolk State, Alabama State, Tennessee State, North Carolina Central, and Alcorn State. That's from 10 to 6. Where are you concerned there? Who you pushing out? You said Prairie View should be in there. That means you got to drop one out. Talking about who drops out?
Yeah, Alabama State drops out for me.
Okay.
I think they have some question marks again at quarterback, and as far as stopping some teams, 3 and 5 in SWAC play. So
you don't think the quarterback transfer coming in? You don't think he's going to be the real deal?
Well, unfortunately, at this point in June, it's a wait and see. But I would have the defending SWAC West champs somewhere in the top 10. So if I'm pulling a team out, I got to pull Alabama State out. I mean,
okay, that's fair.
Alabama State is not.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're not at the Bam Jackson State level yet. Yeah,
I'm with you. Keep going. So you're fine with Norfolk State?
Yeah, I'm fine with all MEAC teams. Let me say that now.
Tennessee State. I know that's right. Tennessee State.
Tennessee State, I thought, turned the corner a little bit last year toward the end part of the season. 5-6 was very respectable. I thought they were a different team than the team Jackson State saw at the beginning of the season. So I'm actually I'm good with Tennessee State where they are.
Lonnie Shaw says strength of schedule should be a part of a schedule. I agree with that, and that is part of the schedule. But right now, it's so hard to really look at a strength of schedule because everything is predicted in terms of what you think somebody's strength of schedule would be.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not going to be huge until some games get played, and then you can start seeing a little more about strength of schedule, unless you're just somebody that believes certain schools are going to be stronger than other schools, then you can do that. But still, at that point, you're still talking about what if. So just wanted to level set with that. Thing that I say about Tennessee State, are you in agreement? A large part of their season is going to be based on, similar to what we're saying, it seems like just about half the teams that are in the top 10 are just outside quarterback play.
I
hadn't
think
heard, that's going to be interesting there. You said you're good with the MEAC, so you're good with North Carolina Central. What about Alcorn State Braves at 6? I want to know, because I know what you've seen with Alcorn, and a lot of this is just the admiration you have for head coach.
One thing I can say about them there, and they seem to have, and I think that's a huge loss, number one, in terms of losing their quarterback. But one thing that Fred McNair does is he keeps a quarterback on the roster, okay? And I think the culture is definitely in place for Alcorn, where, they know how to win. But losing Cedric Thornton off of that staff, that means something to me. That's a lot. I have a huge admiration for Cedric Thornton and what he was able to get done at Alcorn. I have huge admiration for his coaching prowess. When you talk about one of the gritty and grimy DCs in this conference, he gets his teams up for games and they get after. And that's what I'm really looking to see with this Grambling State football team in terms of him joining that staff. So I think that's one of those things that you kind of have to take a look at with Alcorn, whether they lose some of that intensity that he brought on the defensive side of the ball. But one thing I can say, they keep puzzle pieces from an offensive standpoint. So I do look for Alcorn to continue to be able to score points. They always keep a quarterback ready to rock. So 6 might be a little high for me, but I think it's justifiable.
I got you. Very fascinating when you look at this. Let's get into this top 5. Well, let's hold off. Let's take a break and we'll get into this. Let's tease it out a little bit. I really like what you did in terms of 10 through 6. You dropped out, just for everybody, you dropped out Alabama State and you put in Prairie View. The rest of the ones you might mix up a little bit, but you were pretty much okay with in terms of the bottom 6. So we're going to get in the top 5 and see what you think about my top 5. So let's tease it out. We'll get into this break. We'll come back and get your thoughts in terms of what is in the top 5. This is going to be fascinating because we're going to have to do our predicted order finish for the MEAC, SWAC West, SWAC East. And now people are going to be held accountable to the records. And I think more than what we thought last year, it's going to be really intriguing to try to figure out what you're going to do with some teams. So get into that summer ball, see what people are saying. It's going to be fascinating to see ultimately what happens there. With that, stick with us. We'll be right back after this last break as we start to find some football churning as things are changing and it's just getting into that summer months, summer workouts. People are running, getting in, making sure they can get it done and get ready for that fall ball. It'll be interesting as we get going. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this break.
I love these statements, sneakily loaded.
Sneakily loaded.
There's no such thing.
Still going, so let's see if we can get in here
Q Time is a classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Now, you can live in Texas and not have a good red meat blend. Texas Cowboy Dust is designed for steak and other red meats. It's out to be my most popular spice blend, made with onions, peppers, ground mushrooms, pink salt, and other spices. Texas Cowboy Dust also goes great with chicken, pork, vegetables, and adds a restaurant quality sheen to gravies and sauces.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Vanilla smoked sea salt seasoning is for seafood. The tarragon and fennel bring out the natural sweetness in seafood. I also use it in rice dishes, on yams, asparagus, blueberry pancakes, and believe it or not, chocolate chip cookies. Vanilla smoked sea salt adds a salty and savory component to sweet dishes that create a symphony for the tongue.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on?
Sure, it's wireless. Pick something we all like.
Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password?
Buick Envision 2021.
Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable.
That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking.
Me too.
Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of you.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Charles Bishop, the professor, is in the building analyzing the top 10 poll rankings. Dr. Cavil's 2022 HBCU Major Division top 10 poll rankings. The mid-major poll rankings will be released on Thursday, so we will give you that. So make sure, as we had some folks asking about the mid-major, so we will get into a little bit of the mid-major to make sure you get that. Before we get in there, some people have me cracking up in terms of the comments here, so just wanted to show some love. Somebody said SU is sneakily loaded. I don't know how you loaded and sneakily, either you are loaded or not, but hey, float your boat. I tell you what, Southern, just like every other team out there, will get a chance to show it on the field. And they do have some talent. They do have some talent. Jeff Roberts says, and that was Troy Franklin. Jeff Roberts says, what about Hampton? They start the season with Howard, Tuskegee, and Norfolk State. Howard is going to be much improved. They're going to be solid. That's not going to be an easy game. Tuskegee under the new coach, they're going to come out there firing on all cylinders. So I think they'll get that game, but that's not a gimme. Then you got Norfolk State, and that's just a rivalry game. But Norfolk State is going to be solid. And then you got the problem with them getting into the Colonial schedule, and they're playing some teams that are looking at being top 10, top 15, top 25 for sure on their schedule. William and Mary, Villanova. So I think it's going to be, frankly, a long season for Hampton in regards to looking like they improved in the Big South at 5-6. I'm not too sure about what the season will come out. I think it can get pretty ugly, and it might get ugly quick for Hampton. With that being said, let's get back in here, top 5, and see what you say about my top 5. in terms of that. Yeah, he talking about they beat Campbell. Campbell had 3 wins last year. They had a loaded recruiting class, but they're mostly freshmen. And so I don't think you can compare Campbell or Garner Webb to Villanova or William and Mary in terms of competition. They certainly beat A&T. And so I think that was a solid win. And Howard is just on the rise. But again, as somebody said earlier, you're talking about strength of schedule, who you play. So they lost the quarterback as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see where they're going to go in that position as they try to improve. So I think they have some questions, but it's questioning like most other teams. So I think that was a good point in terms of Hampton. It'll be fascinating. And this year, I will say this. I think you're going to have some surprises in terms of teams that jump in the top 10 period. And then some teams that itch their way possibly in terms of the bottom 5, 4 and 5 position could be some teams that are outside of the poll ranking now. I will say that. With that being said, as we get in the top 5, let's see what people say. North Carolina A&T Aggies, I think they're going to have a benefit of their schedule. I don't see the Big South as very tough. And so I think that's going to help them to some degree in terms of what they get done this year. Again, they have some question in terms of replacing everything running back. Although he was injured last year, so he didn't have the type of season he had previous 2 years.
That's a huge loss, Jermaine Moore.
But to think that you're just going to replace him with anybody, I think is going to be fascinating to see about that position. Bringing us to number 4, Alabama A&M Bulldogs. I believe in Maynard. I think there's some talent there. But this is a team that I think, because of rightfully so, how they got dump trucked by Jackson State, I think people just fell off the radar. But if you look closely, they finished strong with the last game. They finished with the 7-3 mark. They had the bad loss, if you want to call it, based on what Grambling did last year to Grambling. But if you think about that, which was 5 turnovers literally in that game, they would have said at 8-2. They had FAMU at home where they played them really solid. FAMU, to their credit, played and won that game at the end. But this is not a Alabama team in terms of looking at what happened to Jackson State in terms of the rest of the losses. They were right in 2 of those games. So this is a team, to me, that is not as far behind than everybody. And in terms of the talent influx, they followed the model of what you see at Jackson State. And we saw what that happens. When you bring that talent in, if you can get them to play together, you can have a talented team. And if you look at the track record of Maynard in terms of what he's able to do, a coach, we talk about a lot of the other solid coaches in the conference. If you look what he's able to do coaching-wise, he's solid there. And then, obviously, Jackson State, South Carolina State. Talk a little bit about them. So what are your thoughts in my top 5? Am I making sense? Or are you like, man, come on?
Alabama A&M. That is my one that I'm a little, wary of because, and I think you touched on it. After 61-15, I think they collectively dropped off the radar for a lot of people that watch the SWAC. And folks, Aquila Glass is not walking through the doors. That's 3,500 yards gone, as well as 350 yards a game. Replacing that will not be easy. I have a great admiration for Keenis Boulware, who's taken over that defense. And much like Cedric Thorne, those are guys who put guys in places and they get it done defensively. So I do expect Alabama A&M to improve defensively, but you would have to think that there has to be a step back from an offensive standpoint, even with Connell Maynard. And that's just the way the way I see it. It's hard. It's going to be real hard to replace an Aquila Glass. I'm sure he's gone out and they've done a roster overhaul much the same way Jackson State did when they went from the spring to the fall in terms of a roster overhaul. So that's the one that I'm a little wary of with Alabama A&M.
The thing that's interesting to me is it wasn't until Maynard got a hold to Glass that we saw the spike in what we now believe was
That's
Glass.
fair. That's fair.
If you think about Maynard, one of the things that he's always been able to do is the offensive side of the ball. That has never been a concern. His concern is defense, and he's got one of the bellwether folks, as you talk about bellwether. I'm not really concerned about Alabama and A&M's offense. If anything, can Boulware do what everybody thinks he's capable of doing with the defense? Trust me, there won't be a problem with Alabama A&M's offense. They'll find a way to score. That's not going to be the issue.
That'll be,
it'll be fast. Like you said, it's fair though. I give you that glass is not something that's easily replaceable, but I'm going to finish with that. Let's go.
And so the way I see it is you have Alabama A&M right there, and FAMU and Jackson State are somewhere there. So I think that your ranking in terms of FAMU and Jackson State.
But this is the thing that puzzles me about that is FAMU and A&M in that game. See, I don't know if people really watched that game. They've seen it close. A&M dominated that entire game until the end, a couple of key plays that FAMU was able to get. But there was not a huge gap between FAMU and Alabama A&M. And again, I think people are, snowboarding in terms of what they saw Jackson State do against Alabama A&M. And credit, I think that was one of those games, and they were motivated, they got it done, and the ball started rolling, it was over that. But if you use that game as your framework in terms of what Alabama A&M, I think people are going to be surprised what they get done.
Well, take a look at it. I mean, when you take a look at it, Florida A&M, by virtue of the loss of Jackson State, I see where they come in at number 3. And Jackson State at number 2, South Carolina State number 1. I think that's fair. You take a look at it, South Carolina State, they won convincingly on a neutral field. So I have no problem with South Carolina State coming in ranked number 1. From being around Jackson State's program, I think a lot of fans have questions with regards to the offensive line, much like Coach Prime did in the spring football to the fall football. He pinpointed what the issues were. He went out and recruited. They've overhauled the offensive line. You're going to see a huge change with regards to the offensive line. But that's a legitimate question, I think, that fans would have for this Jackson State football team. If it's possible for Jackson State to get even better from 11-2 and 8-0 in the SWAC, I think they've gone out and they've done it in terms of what they were able to do from a recruiting standpoint. I think this defense, again, is going to be on the precipice of some history making, much like this past season. The question becomes for this Jackson State team, who becomes that new edge rusher, much like James Houston last year. They have some guys that they're really excited about stepping up, filling the shoes, not only for James Houston, but Antoine Owens as well, unsung member of that defensive line who really pushed that pocket up the middle. So I think they are really excited about some of the pieces they were able to do on the defensive end. And we saw Travis Hunter in the spring, this past spring, what he can do. He is going to be a name week in, week out. They're going to do some things with him this upcoming season to really highlight his dynamic skill set. But with regards to the poll ranking, no problems whatsoever with South Carolina State being number 1, Jackson State being number 2.
Yeah, I think you're saying probably the top 3. You clearly believe are better than everybody else, at least at the beginning of the season going in terms of not only what they did last year, but what they have coming back, especially in key positions, offensively and defensively. I see that same thing for the top 4. And that's going to be fascinating to see, does that pan out? I really think the top 4 are separated from everybody. What scares me so much about these teams, other than A&M, like you said, with the quarterback, is these top 3 teams have so much coming back. And they're just going to add to it. All these teams have so much coming back in terms of that. I think South Carolina State was literally a year ahead of schedule. And you saw them climbing the hill at the very right time, which is a different team of what you saw in the first half of their season. And don't forget the type of schedule they played at the first half of the season. which is a lot of those losses. And I think a lot of people got caught up in the number of losses they had versus that. Like you said, Jackson State, they just believe in bringing in talent. And they coach it very well. And I don't think they get the credit in terms of what they do.
Great point. They don't
with that talent. And if they're able to do the talent infusion on that offensive line, we saw what Shedeur can do. This is a guy that did all this, that didn't necessarily have the greatest amount of time. And you could tell in terms of his maturity at the quarterback and seeing plays. I mean, what he did at Southern was Southern tactically, emotionally played a tremendous game against Southern and gave Jackson State, in terms of rivalry, everything he did. And he made big time plays after getting big time hits at the end of the game. And that was a deciding factor to me in terms of Shedeur, of overall his maturity. And I don't think that's going to do anything go forward. And let's not forget about this number 1 ranked young man that's coming into Jackson State, cornerback and wide receiver. We saw in the spring ball, and I know it's spring ball, but as a freshman that's coming in, this young man is the real deal.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter. And if you don't think he's going to wreak some havoc, and the thing is, they're going to give him the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
For sure. And I think he's going to make the most of it. So that scares me. Fam, when you got Isaiah, the top FCS player, coming back, they loading up on fronts, getting in front, and they know who they chasing in terms of Jackson State. Oh my goodness, that's scary. And I'll say it again, but we're with Alabama A&M in that defense. When you sitting over there in that East, hell, you know what you got to deal with. You're not gonna just sit back and shrink. You're gonna come, and you can tell in terms of what he went in that transfer portal that it's gonna be real deal. That
overall,
East, and I know I'm a person that loves my West. Right now, the HBCU world, I know a lot of folks think it's Jackson, but the HBCU world revolves around the SWAC Eastern Division outside of South Carolina State. And as many teams they play in the East, I know they not in the East, but just for this dialogue, I'm counting them part of the East too. They just reckon don't count in the East Division. They get to go finish up the stuff, and then they find a way, get in the Celebration Bowl and play what many people think whoever comes out of the East. So it's fascinating. So yeah, I just see top 4 teams out of the East Division the way I see it. Yeah, I know I'm just joking, but that's where it is. Any final thoughts before I let you go? I think I beat you up enough for all your comments, and you're a good sport because I told you how I really felt, and you took it. So you grade well, you're going to get an A+, get out of the class this year.
I think it's a solid poll. Solid poll to start things off with. I think it's fair. Like I said, I'm going to hold up for PB. I think PB deserves to be up in there, especially based on their performance last year. And I think that culture is in place to where they're not going to back up to Southern and Grambling. I think we learn a lot about this Purdue A&M team when they take on Texas Southern Labor Day Classic.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be fun. You're gonna get right off the bat, just like you got the East with FAMU and Jackson State.
Yeah,
right. You're gonna find out real quick in the West in terms of has the tide finally changed in terms of Texas Southern, or is Prairie View going to continue to put themselves in position to play for some big games later in the season? It's going to be fascinating to see. Southern's going to want some payback against Texas Southern. Southern's going to want to show that game with no fluke was not what it was. I mean, they played Jackson State for essentially 3 quarters. So offensively, that's not really a question for Texas Southern. In terms of, they lost a couple of wide receivers, but they got some talented folks coming back. So I'm fascinated about all this, and we'll get a chance to talk, as we said, the mid-majors next Thursday. Thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watch and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Mills Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watch, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday and Thursday. We'll be right back at 6 o'clock. Be ready for the mid-major poll. It's going to shock you, as we do have some changes there. I know people are not ready for it. If they thought this was interesting. Wait till you see that one. We'll discuss the latest in the news. A lot of things will be up and down. We'll see what we can talk about then. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil. That's DrKenyattaCavil. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter. Facebook and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Charles.
Of course.
Roy.
Lecture.
Dismiss.